The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Market Fantasy. The brand new offer for new customers. Play just $5, get $100 bonus funds with promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Monday afternoon, September 29th, around 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm Rosso Escarra once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the matchups taking place on Tuesday in Tokyo and in Beijing. We have the final match between Alcaraz and Fritz taking on in Tokyo, and the semis taking on in Beijing. So we're going to break down all three of those matches in a few minutes. Before we get into the actual breakdown of those matches, a reminder, you can also check out the podcast on either YouTube or Spotify or Apple. So if you watch it through YouTube or you actually listen to it audio only, that's fine. But please leave a rating and a review on Spotify and Apple. And please like and subscribe on YouTube to help the show grow. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great tennis merch. We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs, different colors, very affordable and comfortable. So check out all the merchandise that we have. Plus, a reminder for the actual merch store, we're having a sale right now until the end of September. A quarter off everything with the promo code football. So once again, if you want to get yourself some Tennis Gambling Podcast merch, the code works for every single item on the merch store. Use a code football at checkout until the end of September for 25% off anything in the merch store. So starting off with a recap of what happened in the last episode. Overall, I feel like the episode itself was fine. Unfortunately, the lock and dog picks were not great. So for the lock, picked up a loss. We had Medvedev team total over 12.5 against Zverev at -124. Thought he would win. Unfortunately, we ended up being a bit too right because he ended up winning handily. So Medvedev ended up coasting, and that did not work out in our favor as we had the team total over. Is what it is. Thought Zverev would put up more of a fight, and he did not. He kind of got buried. He had a chance to break back. It was a low 40. He had, I believe, 4 break points, choked them all away, and Medvedev ended up coasting to the finish line. Zverev, though, had 0 aces, so it felt like he was definitely not in it, bringing his A game. Didn't matter. Medvedev, we know, owns him. In hindsight, should have taken him on the money line instead at like -136, but we didn't really trust him. I know he's kind of turned over a new leaf with a new coach, but the point is we thought Zverev would at least not get embarrassed, and he did. Just picked up a loss there for the lock. For the dog, we were probably coasting to a nice, easy win, and it didn't matter because Mensik ended up quitting. We had Dimenauer straight sets at +113. He was up 4-1 in the first set. Mensik hurt his knee and quit. So Dimenauer was on pace to dominate, and unfortunately, we got robbed of what could have been a nice winner with a void because Mensik got injured. Hopefully, he recovers, but either way, Dimenauer was the better player early and often. Didn't matter. They played 5 games, and Mensik ended up going home. So, once again, not a great episode for the lock and dog, but for the actual match previews, we did pretty well if you took all the stuff that we gave out. So, overall, pretty upsetting. You had a couple of retirements, not just for men's, but also for women's, because you saw, for example, Boyson quit, you saw Osorio quit, and you saw Zhang quit. That was on the women's side in Beijing. For the men's side, Mensik quit and Musetti quit. So in Beijing, same event once again, and you ended up seeing 5 retirements in one day, which is pretty rare. But either way, point is you saw a lot of shortened matches, which were, I'd say, pretty annoying for the fans. But for the actual recap, though, Dimenauer won. Saw Sinner beat Morozin in straight sets. Thought he would. Morozin actually was serving for the set. Then he fell apart. He ended up losing the next 3 games. Think Sinner won 11 of the last 12 points, but Sinner did win in straight sets. Looking at Tien, though, we actually picked him to pull off a bit of a shocker there against Musetti, and he did. Musetti got injured, ended up quitting into the 3rd set. Tien got off to a bad start. Musetti kind of got banged up, and we've seen that happen constantly in Musetti's career. Does get hurt a lot. But either way, point is you are looking at Musetti, who felt like he, 1, wasn't feeling great, 2, didn't want to be there. And you saw Tien get the job done. We mentioned that Musetti had bad numbers against lefties recently, and that trend continued. We actually like Tien to keep the close. We like the over in that one. If you have an annoying book, the book voided it. However, you should have automatically won because you went to the 3rd set and they were already at 19 games. You automatically won the over. So if your book voided, find a new tennis book. If your book cashed the over, then that's what should have been the grade because it ended up going 3 sets and it was guaranteed to go over. he just ended up quitting at 3-0. So we called TN to actually pull off a shocker, and he did. We thought the price was too big on Musetti, like the over for that one. And we thought Medvedev would win as he beats Zverev in straight sets. So once again, not a bad episode in Beijing. We just didn't pick well for the actual lock and dog. For Tokyo, I thought Fritz would win, but we thought Brooksby would hang in there. Unfortunately, we missed out by the hook there for the Brooksby 4.5 games, as Fritz did win by 5. It was close early. Fritz served too well. Brooksby had some chances, but just could not convert. And you saw Alcaraz beat Ruud. Did drop a set, though. Ended up losing the first set. Then he battled back, and he was able to win in 3. Felt like he was kind of coasting towards the end. I know it was 6-4 at the end, but it felt like Ruud was really never going to break him. And he had a couple of breakpoint chances early in the third set. He had 15-40 in the 1-2 return game. Didn't convert. Of course, Alcaraz ended up getting the boomerang break and held throughout. So Ruud gave it a good run, played well. Alcaraz was in great form entering the match in the semis. Then he seemed to take a step back a little bit, but he set the bar very high against Bergs, etc. And Alcaraz eventually did win in 3. Not dominant, but still got the job done, 1 in 3. And now we ended up having Alcaraz versus Fritz in the final. Now, this is going to set us up for the actual recap of our outrights, because so far, knock on wood, pretty good in the episode. So starting off with the Tokyo outrights, we had no quarter odds for the event. We automatically win. We had Alcaraz at -160 as an outright, and we had Fritz at 550. They're playing in the final, guaranteed outright winner there, so definitely nice. Now, Alcaraz, massive favorite. He's about -470. So once again, you can't really, I'd say, break down the units if you want to go for some type of, I'd say, hedging or some type of opportunity there, because you already have a -160 and a 550. You're kind of just chilling at this point, and you can't really add more liability on Alcaraz because he's -470. So, yeah, I feel like for that match alone, I'm going to break it down, and if you did not actually bet the futures, then I'll recommend what I think you should do for the final. But if you took the plays that I gave out pre-tournament, you're kind of just taking a nap, and you're going to wake up and whatever happens, happens, because you have a guaranteed winner on both sides. Beijing, though, so far so good for the quarters. For the first quarter, we had Sinner, 550. Once again, didn't bet that, but that was the only option you had, and he ended up cashing, obviously. Second quarter, we did lose on Chang at 14-1, but we had Dimenauer at +110. That worked out, so a nice win there for the second quarter. Third quarter did not work out, as we had Bublik at +275, and he ended up, of course, losing immediately to Manarino. But for the fourth quarter, people gave me some crap in the comments section, because I was going to back a couple of head cases, and we backed Fokina at 4-1. The main logic, though, behind the fourth quarter was fading Zverev, who was compromised in the Laver Cup. So I gave out Fokina and Medvedev at 3-1, and a lot of people hated the play, and I don't blame you, because Medvedev has been really bad for the last couple of years, and he was a head case, fired his coach. But you know what? Sometimes fading Zverev makes the risk worth it, and we blindly faded Zverev in a pretty weak quarter besides those 3 guys, and it worked out. So everyone who doubted Medvedev, I was going to play the spot anyway. I recognize the form wasn't great, but it worked out. And Medvedev got the job done there at +300. Shout out to him. If you did not tail me on that, I understand. If you did, hopefully you enjoy the +300. For the outrights, though, we have one player left. Of course, it is Sinner at -148. And yeah, he's a massive favorite against Dimenauer. He will be a favorite in the final if he beats Dimenauer. We're on good pace. So once again, a very good outright episode so far, and we'll see how we do in the quarters. In the quarters and other events in Shanghai coming up later on this week. And, of course, the matchups taking place on Tuesday in Tokyo for the final and in Beijing for the semis. Anyway, basically that's all I really have to talk about for the tennis landscape. The futures have been good. The picks, once again, could have been better. Apologies there. But if you actually followed all the other once again, previews for the matchups for Monday morning, I feel like most of the matches went the way that we thought. Besides that, though, nothing else to really talk about. Yeah, that's basically it. So anyway, time to move on into the preview of the matchups on Tuesday. Before getting to the matchups, though, reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, MyBookieDaddy. Using the bet on football, they have a prop builder second to none. Their model is simple: bet anything, anywhere, anytime. Use crypto or deposit and payouts when you sign up for a new account. Use code SGPN for 100%. Bet back bonus $500 for new customers. MyBookieDaddy promo code SGPN. MyBookieDaddy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Novig, which is America's #1 sports futures market. And since it's an exchange, we're getting some great prices in the market. It's available in a bunch of states, 35 of them to be exact. And a reminder, download the Novig app, $50 when you spend just $5. If you use promo code SGPN, get on the actual Novig, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish going through the recap of what happened in the Monday matches. Time to move on into the preview for Beijing semis and for Tokyo finals. So starting off with Beijing. So for this one, you're looking at what are two pretty big favorites on the card. One is kind of a why bother favorite, and the other might be competitive. But you have Sinner taking on de Minaur in the first matchup. Sinner is -750, de Minaur is +530. For the spread, you have either reduced 4.5 for Sinner at -155 or -5.5 games at +115. De Minaur +5.5, though, is -135. The over-under is at 20.5 or 19.5. 19.5 over is -135. The under on 20.5 is -130. Set spread, Sinner straight sets -225. de Minaur to win ace sets +170. The over 2.5 sets is +220. So the head-to-head has been a complete path of no resistance for Sinner because he has owned de Minaur. He is 10-0 lifetime, 10-0, and 9 of the 10 meetings ended in straight sets. Ouch. It has been very, very ugly when they face off against each other, and you might end up seeing a pretty similar story unfold here on Tuesday. Now, Sinner's been good, not great so far in the event. Destroyed Cilic, lost set to Otman, then he made amends by winning 6-0 in the final set, and then was against Morozin, and Morozin served for the second set. So Sinner's been good, but he has not been his usual dominant self. Now, de Minaur has been very good. He went to the Laver Cup, was very good, arguably Team World MVP, showed up in Beijing, beat Bu in straight sets, beat Rinderknech in 3, and beat Mensik in 5 games. So not exactly great competition. Rinderknech was a lucky loser who filled in at the last minute. Mensik was injured, and you're looking at Bu, who I don't think is that great. I know it's in China, but still, Bu, I think, is more of a fringe ATP-challenger guy. So de Minaur's had a pretty easy path up to this point. Sinner's path hasn't really been that difficult either. Otman, we know, made the crazy run in Cincinnati. So you could argue that he is definitely dangerous, and Sinner did drop a set there. But you're looking at Sinner, who simply put owns him in the head-to-head. Will de Minaur, with his recent form, do anything to challenge Sinner? My answer is no. I don't think so. I think Sinner ends up killing him. I think de Minaur is a guy who simply put is a bad matchup for, or I should say Sinner's bad matchup for de Minaur, because we're looking at the main issue. And the main issue is simple. Sinner can rally, and he has tons of firepower. De Minaur can only rally. I know he's tried to improve on the firepower. He's gotten better in that area, and it has resulted in some good outcomes for him. But in reality, Sinner's just a much better player. And the issue that de Minaur runs into is, one, the serve's not going to be great, and you're looking at Sinner, who should get a bunch of returns in play. Not to mention, de Minaur's going to be passive. He's going to have to play defense the entire time. And if you keep the ball in play against Sinner, he's going to kill you. He's going to make you run around the court. He's going to make you play a lot of extra balls going side to side. And I can see Sinner coming forward. But de Minaur, do I think he'll be aggressive during points in the match? He's going to try to. Will it work? Probably not. I see Manzi mentioning that the average score for Sinner in each set is roughly 6-3.2. So de Minaur rarely wins 4 games in a set against Sinner. And going through the head-to-head, it has been very, very decisive and very ugly. Now, they faced off, I will point out, earlier this year in the Australian Open, and it was as bad as it sounds. 6-3, 6-2, 6-1. It reached a point where people thought de Minaur should quit to save himself the embarrassment in front of the home country Australian fans. But the point is, Sinner is just much better. Yes, I understand de Minaur's played good tennis. Yes, I know that Sinner has not been dominant against Otman and against Morozin. But I do think at the end of the day, you're looking at a spot where it's a bad matchup for de Minaur because of the firepower angle. At least Morozin and Otman can unload on both wings and at least force Sinner to play defensively. De Minaur can't do that. It's really a bad matchup for him in general, probably the worst matchup possible for de Minaur. So I like the under in the match. I think that's going to be pretty lopsided. I think Sinner wins 6-3, 6-2, maybe 6-3, 6-4. But I think you might end up seeing one close set. Other than that, complete rout. I think Sinner dominates. Give me Sinner -4.5 games as well for my thoughts in this matchup. Moving on to the other matchup with a pretty decent favorite, despite not being as big of a favorite as Sinner. You have Medvedev at minus 340, give or take. You have Tien at around plus 275. For the spread, also 3.5. It's 3.5 or 4.5. 4.5 plus money for Medvedev at plus 110, plus 4.5 for Tien's minus 130. 3.5, though, you have Medvedev minus 3.5 at minus 160. For the over-under, 21.5 games. The over is minus 105. The under is minus 115. Set spread, you have Medvedev in straight sets at minus 130. Tien to win a set is plus 100. And the over-under in sets, the over 2.5 sets, is plus 160. Now, Tien's been good. Not dominant so far in the event. But you know what? Tough competition. Faced off against Cerundolo, then Caboli, then Musetti. Really tough draw. And you know what? Good for him. He made it through. Now he's in the semis. Now Medvedev had a pretty tough draw as well, beating Zverev, beating Fokina, and beating Norrie, and he's not dropped a set. So he has been very, very comfortable in the entire event. And Medvedev, dare I say, it looks like his old self again. Is that good enough to beat Sinner? I didn't say that. Is it good enough to make the final? Of course. I think that he should be favored over Tien. Tien, though, as a reminder, beat him earlier this year in the Australian Open. Having said that, when you factor in the form Medvedev was in all year, it's impressive nonetheless, but I would say the impressive win aged, I'd say, unimpressively. Not taking too much away from Tien, who was 4-1, obviously, to win the match. But Medvedev, as a reminder, in that event, ended up beating a random unknown guy in 5 in the first round. And besides that, he lost in the first round of every single Grand Slam besides the Australian Open. So he's really, I'd say, an overrated win if you factor the actual results that he had for the first 8 months of the year. Now, we've seen him with a new coach, and suddenly he looks great again. So maybe that's what he needed, and you ended up seeing him beat Fokina handily, beat Zverev handily. Yes, I know Tien on the head-to-head, you might argue, is live against him because he proved he can beat Medvedev. He did so in 5 in the Australian Open. But Medvedev on these courts, I think, looks really, really good. Tien, props for being here, but I do think Tien might be a bit of a trap play. I think the public will be jumping on Tien with the argument of he beat this guy already. Why is he getting 4.5 games? He should be able to keep this close. I'm not sure about that. I think Medvedev might come out and bury him. We'll see what happens, but I think Tien will make one set close. Then after that, maybe it's a bloodbath. I don't mind seeing potentially a 7-5, 6-2 type of matchup here. I think Medvedev eventually finds a groove. Tien was pretty fortunate that Musetti got injured because I know he picked it up in the second set onward. The first set wasn't pretty for Tien. In fact, Musetti looked quite comfortable, and Musetti did not face a break point in the entire first set. So Medvedev, we know, can double fault himself out of a hold of serve. We know this, but Tien's serve is not great. The fact is Tien has less than 2 aces in every match in this event. So the serve has not been dominant. It's been fine. Medvedev, though, has been returning very well from the back of the court. And the fact is, it seems like he's unloading a bit more on both wings. Seems like there's a bit more aggression from Medvedev with the new coaching staff, which I like. And I feel like that's why he was able to beat Zverev. He was able to take control of points. And even though he was able to keep the ball in play, there was some purpose to his shots. Felt like with the old coaching staff, his main purpose was keep the ball in play, and that set up his opponent to take control of points. Medvedev, though, has been more aggressive. He's been more calculated with the shot selection, and it's worked out. So I think Tien can make one set close. In reality, I just don't think Tien's serve is good enough to hold for an entire set. So if I'm giving Medvedev at least one break in every set, potentially more, he's in a great spot. I think straight sets minus 130 makes a lot of sense for Medvedev. And I think you're looking at what could be a spot where Medvedev maybe ends the title streak. It's been a couple of years at this point. But I think Sinner will get into that if they face off against each other in the final. But I think that Tien is a worthy dog of this size. Medvedev's beaten better competition, all in straight sets. And you could argue Tien might be a bit fatigued after having a bunch of, I'd say, tough matches. The Musetti one ended in 2.5 sets. Caboli no-showed the entire match. And even Cerundolo was a very tough match. So it's not been an easy path for Tien so far. And Medvedev, form-wise, has been the second best player in the field. You could argue the best player in the field because Sinner's had a couple of, I'd say, moments where it seemed like he was going to drop a set. He did drop a set, and Medvedev is not. So I like Medvedev here comfortably. I think he wins in straight sets. I think Tien makes one set close maybe. The serve's not good enough, though. Give me Medvedev to get the job done in straight sets here at around minus 130. Moving on to the next matchup here. For this one, going to the Tokyo final, to Alcaraz and Fritz. A reminder, if you backed my outrights, we don't have to do anything for this match. We have Alcaraz minus 160, and we have Fritz at plus 550. Now, for the actual pricing for the match here, if you did not bet the outrights, you have Alcaraz minus 470. Fritz is plus 350. For the spread, minus 3.5 for Alcaraz, plus 3.5 for Fritz. Plus money, though, plus 120 for Fritz. For the over-under, 21.5 games, minus 135 on the over. The under is plus 105. 22.5, you plus 110 for the over. The under is minus 130. For the set spread, Alcaraz straight sets minus 150. Fritz to win ace set is plus 117. Match to go to 3 sets is a plus 167. So a bit of deja vu faced off in the Laver Cup last week, actually. And Fritz killed him. Fritz won in straight sets. Good for him. That was about 9 days ago, won 6-3, 6-2. Now, Alcaraz, we know, has been playing extremely well on hard courts, and Laver Cup is hard court, very, very slow. So it's kind of a really difficult event to use to compare to Tokyo. Tokyo plays a lot faster. That's why we've seen Alcaraz look sharp. Fritz did look good, maybe confidence-wise. He'll be able to build on that win against Alcaraz. And Alcaraz did drop a set to Ruud in the semis. But Alcaraz, before that loss to Fritz, had won every meeting. Now, I will point out Fritz did win the second set against Alcaraz in Wimbledon in the semis. Alcaraz, of course, did win in 4. The sets were close, though. There was a breaker in there. Alcaraz won 6-4, 5-7, 6-3, 7-6. So Fritz was competitive on grass. Of course, he didn't win, but Alcaraz ended up having a bit of a struggle against Fritz. So you can argue Fritz is actually a dangerous opponent for Alcaraz in this one. Will I pick Fritz to win? No, I'm not going to. I think Alcaraz is going to win. Now, I think Fritz has been playing pretty well. At the same point, I do think Fritz has had a pretty, I'd say, weak competition up to this point. So is Alcaraz, but he's also number 1 in the world. So Fritz, by comparison, ended up beating Diallo, who was in really bad form. That ended up going to 3 sets, but Fritz got the job done. Borges, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but I know that he had a pretty respectable run in the U.S. Open, lost in 5 to Paul. So I understand Borges can be dangerous, and it was close anyway. Korda ended up beating in 3. So Korda's been coming back from injury lately. He's been fine, but either way, point is a good win for Fritz, and beat Brooksby, which I think we'd all agree in hindsight, a pretty favorable draw for him in the semis. So not the easiest path, but also not any world beaters on the path. And Alcaraz, of course, a massive step up compared to Brooksby, for example. Alcaraz, though, ended up beating Baez, beat Bergs, ended up beating Nakashima, and beat Ruud. Now, Ruud was able to win a set. He's also a good returner in general, but Alcaraz eventually used some drop shots, took control, and the forehand was able to be the main weapon to take control of the rallies. Now, I feel like Nakashima, who I know is worse than Fritz, I'd argue is at least a decent comp for this actual matchup compared to the other opponents, because Nakashima does have a big serve, not exactly the best rallier, and Alcaraz destroyed him, 6-2, 6-4. Now, I think Fritz can make one set close again, but I think Alcaraz wins, and I think that he'll be pissed off after losing to Fritz in the Laver Cup. I see Manzi mentioning the same thing. I think Fritz, with the actual pace of the courts here, can hold serve, force a breaker, and it's why he's a former champion at this event. But Alcaraz, simply put, is just much better than Fritz. And Fritz was able to win an exhibition match against Alcaraz, against regular title match stakes, against top-tier opponents. Fritz usually does not show up, with the exception of Zverev, who he's owned. But Zverev's in his own separate category. So I think Alcaraz wins probably in straight sets, maybe get a breaker in there. So maybe the over is worth a look at 21.5. You get a breaker, then you throw in maybe a 6-3 or 6-4, and you win anyway. But 31.5 games here at minus 135 does sound kind of appealing. Alcaraz team totals juiced to 12.5. I don't mind that, but I think Alcaraz wins. If I had to go for a prediction, I'll go for straight sets with a breaker. Alcaraz was off to a bad start early against Ruud. Then he settled in. It happens. We know Alcaraz can have some wild sets if he hits a lot of errors, and he did. Then he settled in. He dominated. Then the drop shots will be effective against Fritz. I think the variety will work out. Fritz's issue, at the end of the day, is the lack of variety. We know what he wants to do most of the time, And Alcaraz, I think, will be able to exploit that. So give me Alcaraz, use the drop shots, use the serving, some volleying as well. And I think the forehand, simply put, is going to really be the main weapon Alcaraz uses to beat Fritz. I think he ends up out-firepowering him, which is going to be the reason why I'm going to pick him. Give me Alcaraz in straight sets here. I think it's the end of the day a spot where Alcaraz should be the better player because he's number one in the world, and I think he'll look better than he did in the semis against Ruud. Give me Alcaraz to bounce back here in the final as I'm picking him to win in straight sets. Anyway, time to move on into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the actual lock and dog, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Underdog Fantasy. So you can use them to play fantasy pick'em. You win 500 times your entry, pick higher or lower on your favorite player stats. A bunch of different sports you can use it for as well. They have a new offer for new customers. Play for just $5. Get $100 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. They're off to a great start in college football and the NFL. They have a new leaderboard system with cash prize every week just for tracking your bets in the app. Track 5 bets of the same type for any model that you build, and you can win $1K. A reminder, the bets do not have to win. Just track 5 plays, and you're entered into the giveaway to win $1K. Use promo code HOPENY25 when you download the Rhythm app for a quarter off your first month. Once again, Rhythm, use promo code HOPENY25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the semis in Beijing and the final in Tokyo. Time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, going to Beijing, I'm going to go to the de Minaur team total. I'm going to go with the under 8.5 games minus 135. Rogue line by DraftKings. Every other book had 7.5. Yet DraftKings decided to hang 8.5 at minus 135. Thank you. I appreciate the extra game. I think de Minaur is going to get killed in this matchup. Sinner is 10-0 in the head-to-head. 9 of the wins were in straight sets. And you're looking at a really bad matchup for de Minaur. He's been getting buried in almost every meeting. Said before, 9 of the 10 were in straight sets. De Minaur has won less than 9 games in 6 of the last 7 meetings. That includes the 3-set Australian Open match earlier this year. They played an extra set, and de Minaur still couldn't get to 9 games. I think Sinner kills him. I think Sinner is going to use the firepower to bully de Minaur around the court. De Minaur has been playing good tennis lately. I get it. Weak competition so far in the event. And Sinner has been vulnerable with his serve. He got broken by Morozin, almost ended up losing the set, ended up getting broken 3 times in a set against Altman. I get it. De Minaur, though, really not a good server at all. Think Sinner will look sharp. It'll be the usual one-way traffic. Give me a 6-4, 6-2, 6-3, 6-2 type of matchup. Even one close set, a 7-5 or 7-6. There is a chance de Minaur gets buried 6-2 in a set. And with that being the case, I think there's some value for Sinner in straight sets to get the job done comfortably. Give me de Minaur, team total under 8.5, rogue line here, minus 135 on DraftKings as my lock for the show. For the dog, I'm going to go with the same game parlay. I'm going to stay in Beijing. I'm going Medvedev, but I will throw in an aces play. Give me Medvedev money line with the TN under 1.5 aces at even money on Caesars. So Medvedev has been coasting. He has not dropped a set yet. Ended up beating Norrie, beat Fokina, and beat Zverev in straight sets. So he's been great. Now, I will point out that TN has been good, beating good competition, but it has not been easy. Medvedev's been coasting, and yet you're looking at TN, who has lost a set to Cerundolo and Musetti. So I will point out that TN has been battling, and I think Medvedev's not the guy you want to face when you might be exhausted after having a pretty tough first couple of rounds in the event. But for the aces play, I think Medvedev's going to win. First of all, minus 400. I'll throw that in there. Now, for the aces, Medvedev against Zverev, who's a good server. Fokina and Norrie, not so much, but still. He has allowed 2 aces combined in the first 3 matches. Zverev, who's the best server compared to Fokina, compared to Norrie, and compared to TN, had 0 aces in the quarterfinals. So I think 1.5 aces is pretty high, actually, for TN. TN's had less than 2 aces in every single match in the event, and that featured a couple of third sets. So I think Medvedev, with his return position, being that far back with TN's lack of pace, I really don't see many aces happening. Norrie had 1 against Medvedev. I see a similar story here for the lefty. I think TN finishes with probably 1 or 0 aces, and Medvedev wins. But TN under 1.5 aces is minus 150 on Bet365. You throw that in with Medvedev to win on Caesars, and it's even money. So I think it's a good price. I'll take TN to not do much with the serve. I'll back Medvedev to win, and that combined play for a parlay is plus 100 on Caesar. So once again, the lock and dog. The lock's going to be on Dim and Hour. Team total under 8.5 games, minus 135 on DraftKings. For the dog, I'm going to go with Medvedev money line with the TN under 1.5 aces, same game parlay at even money on Caesars. Going to wrap it up for the show. Back once again for the final in Beijing and the preview in Shanghai coming up in a day or two. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.